like the Broncos, and they come alive. Like the Redskins in '83. And when the Dolphins are playing well, yeah, well, they're the team for me. 'Cause I'm Fairweather Johnson. Yeah, yes, I'm Fairweather Johnson.
All right, here we go. Another episode, Captain and Madden Show. We are back with you here. Bright, sparkling May evening. Mike Madden on this side. The captain on the other side, Michael Corby. Captain, howdy doody.
Well, hello there, Mr. Madden. How are we doing today?
Oh, that's a mighty fine response from you. I am doing just great, and we are embarking. Let's say embarking. On
I don't want to issue any embargoes.
Okay, yeah, there's no embargoes, but we're embarking on a new episode with do we want to say a controversial topic? Some might give us a little bit of and we can curse on the show, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
they might give us a little bit of shit for this. Shit, as some
Sugar
people,
honey iced tea?
yeah, some people may say. We're going to talk about the concept of a sports side bitch or a side piece, not a side bitch, a side piece. We don't want to make this crass. We're not a crass program, but for the most part, like we're going to be talking about the teams. We both have strong affiliations with sports teams that we've rooted for decades and decades. Sometimes much to our chagrin, other times, with a lot of glee and a couple of victories in our back pocket or world championships in our back pocket. But this episode, we're going to talk about those teams that we root for that aren't necessarily those teams. Like we kind of have our eye open for somebody else to catch our fancy, and for whatever reason, we become interested or smitten, more or less, with that team. Am I categorizing that the right way, Cap, or am I? Do I seem like I'm over apologizing?
Well, of course, you're always, you're loyal to the one that you love, but occasionally that somebody or someone or a team catches your eye and you find yourself straying away from the team that you love for a moment or for a season or for a series, but you always come back. And sometimes you have to apologize. You have to tell them, like, hey, it was a one-time thing. It's never going to happen again. That team meant nothing to me. Like, I'm still, 100% devoted to you.
Yeah.
It was just that, I knew by October that, you weren't making the Super Bowl. So I had, their uniforms were really shiny. And
those are all great reasons.
Whatever it was that may have captured your eye or your heart for that fleeting moment.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're just a cheating bastard and you always have a second kind of like
1 foot out the
maybe
door.
Yeah, maybe some people have like, hey, they're my NL team or they're my NFC team or whatever it is. I like this conference or that conference or blah blah blah.
True.
And they don't really, they don't stick to the one team,
the one that brung you.
Sports relationship.
That's right. So let's get into it. We're going to break this down by each of the major sports, and then hit you with some randoms, and obviously honorable mentions once we get to the end of the episode. We will start where we always start, or we start very often with baseball. Baseball has been very, very good, very, very good to us. So I am a card-carrying fan of the New York Mets. Have been a Met fan since probably about 1980, 81. So my first baseball memories, first ballpark that I went to was Shea Stadium and watching the Mets. During the course of a which would be called a roller coaster ride of being a Met fan. I have dabbled in being a fan elsewhere, and I'll get into that in a minute and the reasons why. Tell for the uneducated listener out there. I shouldn't say uneducated. I will just say the uninitiated, uninformed, undereducated.
So I would be, if you're going card-carrying member of the Mets franchise, I would be a card-carrying member of the New York Yankees franchise.
Mm-hmm.
But like I started off probably 7 or 8 years old, kind of getting into baseball. I was very fortunate that of all the things that my parents splurged on, one of them would be cable television.
Oh, yeah.
We were one of the few families in our neighborhood, or the first families, I should say, that have cable.
Ooh, fancy.
And when you had cable, you could watch the Mets, you could watch the Yankees, we were able to watch the Phillies,
Phillies,
the Braves,
Atlanta Braves. Yep.
and the Cubs.
Oh, you had a WGN connection? That's good.
Yeah. So there was never a time where I couldn't watch a baseball game, and those years were just like I fell in love with the game of baseball. So to me, if it was raining outside in the summer, and I came inside and there was a Cubs Pirates game on, I'm gonna sit there and watch it because I can't go outside, and I don't care. Like at that time, I didn't care who was playing because it was baseball.
Yeah, exactly.
Eventually, as I got older, people kind of got into my ear and said, well, you can't just be a fan of baseball. You have to, you kind of have to pick a team.
Pick a lane, right.
And at that time, my favorite player was Don Mattingly. So I was like, okay, well, it would be kind of weird if I didn't root for the team that my favorite player played for. So I became a Yankee fan.
Okay.
And,
well, you focused on being a Yankee fan.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, I generally became primarily just, I didn't, not that I didn't watch other games or anything, but I didn't have a rooting interest in any,
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what you're saying is you never had a roving eye after you were sort of straightened out and told, hey, it's just more traditional to be the Yankee fan and stick with the Yankees. Turn off that television that has the Atlanta Braves on it.
I was told you can't be a Mets fan and a Yankees fan.
Okay, all right.
And I was like, well, why not? And I'm like, one plays in it. No, you can't do that.
Oh,
so
okay. All right.
I was like, okay, well, I guess then I'll be a Yankees fan because Mattingly was my favorite.
Yeah.
But there have been teams from here and there that maybe for a season or two, or especially in a series, or we're just there's something about the fan base or something that where you're kind of like, hey, if that team plays the Yankees, well, naturally I'm going to root for the Yankees, but
against anybody else, yeah.
But anybody else, I'm kind of rooting for that.
Yeah,
team.
I'm pulling for them. Well, I mean, all right, and I think that's kind of where the playoffs are a little bit different than other times.
I have to. And then again, when I do root for them, I have to go back to the Yankees, and I have to be like, "I'm sorry, baby," but I was rooting for this team. It's a one-time thing.
My Yankees need me. Just to give a few examples of my, because I do have a few specifics. In the early part of the '80s, right around the time that I was starting to be ingrained as a Met fan and rooting for the Mets, and really, and you mentioned cable television was a big catalyst to you learning about other teams and baseball and sitting down and watching anything. I can certainly sympathize with that, and that's one of the big key factors. But also, I think collecting baseball cards is another reason why you're hey, my eyes are open to these ball players that play for other teams. Look at the stats. You read the paper or you read a book about legendary players that are doing all these great things, and you say to yourself, well, why can't my guys, my Mets do that, why don't they have the exciting players in the league? And you sort of like your mind goes to, well, maybe eventually they get traded to the Mets, or like they, or they'll, something will change and they'll come to my team. So it's like, I think like card collecting just sort of like gives you that almost like a fantasy world where you can like take a stack of cards, you can, make your dream lineup and look at it and say like, oh, this would be so great. Or like imagine an all-star team of these guys, and I'm rooting for them every week. That would be great. Nowadays, that's kind of the LA Dodgers. But like in the early part of the 80s, like for me, I had an aunt that lived in Houston. And when she would come to visit us, she would bring a bunch of like Houston Astros like stuff, like either T-shirts or a pennant or a jacket or whatever it was. And I was like, oh, the Houston Astros have really cool uniforms. That was that sort of like popsicle looking orange and white and blue and yellow awesome Astros uniform from the early 90s that I was like, this is fascinating to me. Like, this team dresses way better than my team. They have so much more like flashy colors. And plus they have like Nolan Ryan, who's the best pitcher. And it's kind of like, all right, well, as a little kid, like, I'm 6 or 7 years old. I'm like, I kind of like the Astros a little bit. Like, I don't like them more than the Mets, but I like them enough. And they were good. Like, they were in the playoffs in 81 and 82, I think. They made the playoffs. So, like, here I am, like, getting my first, like, as a little kid fan, like, getting my first taste of, like, playoff time. And it's like, oh, the Houston Astros are in the playoffs. Like, this is awesome. Like, I can watch, that these games are on like Channel 7, I'm going to root for them. So that's sort of like, that was me dipping my toe in rooting for a team. But even that was like, all right, I'm not really an established, like, I haven't spent a dime on the New York Mets at that point. It was basically like, all right, I get free stuff from my aunt that lives in Houston. Great. The Astros are awesome. Like, I want to root for this team just like I root for the Mets. So that was kind of the phase one.
Did you ever tell your aunt, hey, no goddamn Yankees coming down to Houston?
Yeah. Yeah, tell those sons of bitches. But no, I didn't. Then, see, I think, and you'll be able to probably understand this a little bit. When you get to, I guess for me, it was like 88, 87, 88. The Mets had won their world title, and it's like, who do I want to play in the next time the Mets make the World Series? Who do I want to play against? And you start looking at the American League, and you're like, I don't want to play the Yankees. The Yankees aren't very good at that time. They're okay. I mean, if there was a wild card, they would have made the playoffs. But I didn't want to play the Yankees. We already beat Boston, and my sights got set on the Oakland A's. And this is the 1988 Oakland A's with Mark McGwire, Jose Canseco. They had Carney Lansford was good. Dave Stewart was a assassin on the mound. And even like from, I guess their run was like 88 to like 90, 91 or 92.
Yeah. I think 92 or 93 is when they traded Canseco.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that kind of pretty much ended everything.
But that one period of time when they made 3 World Series.
You figure they lost to the 87. I think they made the playoffs, right? Or no?
No, Twins.
88.
Twins were. 88 was the first year that they made the playoffs. Yeah.
They lose to the Dodgers in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
89, they beat the Giants in the Earthquake World Series.
Right.
90, they lose to the Reds in the World Series.
They got swept. Yeah. Yeah.
And then 91, they might have. Did they? No, because the Twins.
They missed the playoffs. Yeah. But they were
So yeah,
still,
91, 92 pretty much ended their like little run that they had.
but they were like for that time,
Oh, they
like
were
they
they
were,
were the Bash Brothers. They
yeah.
had
Ricky went back there.
I think was it 3 years in a row they had the Rookie of the Year. I think it was like Walt Weiss.
Hmm.
Um,
Steinbach was a rookie of the year,
yeah,
maybe.
and they were like the first, like the starter went 6 innings,
Hmm.
and then they used their bullpen. They always
Yeah.
mixed and matched. Eckersley was obvious, like he found the fountain of youth in
Yeah, he
return.
was.
Like
Yeah, he was great.
he
Bob
went from being
Welsh.
like he went from being like a out of like a third or fourth rate starting pitcher, and then he was like the
Hmm.
premier closer in baseball for a
Yeah,
number of
yeah.
years. Yeah, they were. I mean, they were like the it team for a little while there in the in baseball.
But like '88 was the year I was like, oh, we're going to be set. It's going to be Mets versus A's in the World Series, and it didn't happen. Mickey fucking Hatcher. But that was sort of like that was my next little like sort of romance, so to speak, with an American League team where it's that was my first really like American League team that I was like I'm reading them in Sports Illustrated every week. You know, again they're the best cards to like hunt down with the McGuires and the Canseco's. And it was I think when did ESPN Baseball Tonight started in like the 1990 season, I want to
Yeah,
say.
I think
And
yeah, somewhere around there.
when there was Major League Baseball on ESPN, whether it was that highlight show or whether it was like a game of the week or a couple games of the week, that was all of a sudden like because we originally, just like you, we had the Philadelphia stations on cable and WGN for a little while, not a long time, but a little while. So those all went away. And even the Braves weren't on all the time on TBS. So it was like, but forget those. Now I've got a highlight show every day that's just baseball highlights. And I've got people that are just talking baseball. And they're featuring this team in Oakland predominantly. It's like, yeah. And they had the most highlights. They had the most exciting team. So it's like, how are you not going to be like, you know, just like mesmerized by the style of baseball that they were playing? It was aggressive. It was like home runs galore. You had a great Met team, but it was sort of like after the Mets got eliminated by the Dodgers there in that '88 League Championship Series, it was sort of like, all right, well, things are cooling off. Now this is my new little team that I have a secret interest in. And there you go. That's what started my fascination with Ricky Henderson, by the way, too.
Well, you were lucky enough that you didn't have to play them a whole lot because there wasn't interleague play.
Yeah, that's right.
And you didn't have to see McGuire and Canseco hit balls that like landed in Monument Park because your pitching staff sucked.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're about to enter into the worst, spell of like in your franchise history. So yeah, like
I know.
it was easier for me to not really be so much into the Bash Brothers and them, and plus, Ricky. Look, he's the greatest leadoff man that I've ever seen, probably in baseball history. The stats ultimately prove it. He's the most leadoff home runs, all that stuff. My memories of Ricky Henderson were he was really good for like 3 years, and then wasn't happy about his contract. And then when Steinbrenner didn't want to talk about his contract, suddenly the hamstring would flare up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then Ricky didn't want to play if Ricky wasn't getting paid. And then, of course, the Yankees had to make the worst trade possible. They traded him to Oakland, which was like, all right, this guy basically is like faked injuries for the past 2 years because he doesn't want to be here anymore. So you trade him to the place where he wants to go.
His home.
And
yeah.
you get Eric Plunk, Greg Cadaret, and Luis Polonia in return. It was like you didn't even get any of their all-star players, nothing. Ricky was a you know, like not a thorn in the side, but of course he had to break the stolen base record against the
He's
Yankees.
a reminder of what you had and what didn't
What you
work out for
had
you
and
guys. I
didn't
get it.
exactly.
I get it.
So I would say I guess like side pieces or the teams that like I tend to kind of root for were maybe more towards the National League
Okay.
because it was easier because there wasn't interleague play. You can,
Yeah.
it was just
Yeah.
like, all right, well, Boston's playing this team in the world, like, or, when the A's played the Dodgers, it was easy to root for the Dodgers because I couldn't stand the A's,
Yeah. Okay. Of course.
or
Yeah.
like, um, I was always partial to the Cardinals.
Okay.
Because they had that, I always kind of linked them almost in a way like they were kind of like the Yankees in the National League. Like they won a lot. They had a long history. They had like some of the best players, Hall of Fame players and stuff through the years.
Yeah.
So I always
Yeah.
kind of had like when it was Twins in St. Louis or Kansas City and St. Louis, I always rooted for the Cards.
Okay.
Plus they had like, they had Vince Coleman, they
Yeah. They
had
had a fun
Ozzie
team.
Smith.
Ozzy. Yeah. Yeah. Willie
Um,
McGee, the ugliest man in professional sports.
and as the years, I guess, the years went on, um, later on, I guess I want to say when adulthood, but like you always kind of rooted for the Cubs. They had a couple of moments,
Yeah.
'84 they
Yeah.
went to the World Series yeah, they went to the World Series and or
No, they
was it
didn't. No, they got 84. They got they were
they got beat by the Padres.
they should have gone to the World Series, but the
Yeah.
Padres were just that much they that much better. Yeah.
They had a pretty fun team in '88 and '89. I think they made the playoffs in '89. Lost to the San Francisco Giants, and then you know later on during that stretch where it was like they put a really good team together in like the early 2000s, and they had like a combination of like veterans and young players, and they
Yeah.
were fun to watch.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then unfortunately the Steve Bartman
Steve
game.
Bartman thing. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I kind of I can see what you're saying about the Cubs, where it's sort of like you were rooting for them because they had the curse, and you're like, this is the year they're going to break the curse. I want to be part of that year that they break the curse. And I think, let's be honest, like it's also they get talked about very lovingly in the press and by longtime baseball fans because of the affiliation with Wrigley Field and the history of Wrigley. So I can definitely see where like you would, if you need a National League team to sort of like lay into a little bit, I could definitely see them being appealing because they are much like the Yankees. They're kind of a history, like a living history, and you're chasing down in the 2000s. You had a
except
couple
they had a
shots
history of except they had a history of losing,
disappointments. Yeah,
while the Yankees had a history of winning.
yeah, that's true.
The other, I think like the last team that I probably was like kind of rooting for at the same time would have been the when Torrey and Mattingly were over with the Dodgers.
The Dodgers. Okay. Yeah.
Torrey took over as the manager. Mattingly was the hitting coach, and basically it was announced that like whenever Torrey had decided he was going to not manage anymore, that Mattingly was going to take over, and eventually he did.
Okay.
So during that spell, I was kind of definitely, I would say that for those like 3 or 4 years, like the Dodgers were really like. I mean, I actually went out and bought a Dodgers T-shirt that had Mattingly on the back of it,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and stuff. So I think that was like the last.
But that's a follow your guy. That's a follow your guy.
Yeah,
He's my guy.
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I didn't follow him to the Marlins, or he's now the hitting coach in Toronto. I have not.
Yeah.
I'm still hoping maybe there'll be a day that he comes back, whether as a coach or something with the Yankees and finishes it up. But yeah, that was probably the last time where like all right, I gotta get home. Like, the Dodgers in the playoffs and the game's on at like 8 o'clock.
Yeah. You want to
Like I'm gonna sit there and watch somebody other than the Yankees in the playoffs, like for a full 9 innings.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Just to see, hey, they probably picked this up from Mattingly. He was my favorite player.
It
Like,
was,
look how
I
they're
mean,
getting
it
a
was one of those
chance.
things where like, well, fuck it. You never got to win one with the Yankees, whether when he was a player or in the coach. He was a hitting coach on the '04 team that, blew the 3-0 game lead to Boston.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was like, all right, well, if he's not going to win one, with the Yankees, I could root for the Dodgers. I'd like to see him root. It wouldn't, obviously it would have been weird if the Dodgers ever faced the Yankees while Mattingly and Torrey were there. But
Well, you'd
you know,
cross that bridge when you get to it.
right.
Hope that they
But
get there, and then it's like, all right, well, I brought you here.
Ne-
Now I'm throwing you over the
needless-
side.
Needless to say, last year when the Yankees and Dodgers were in the
Oh,
World
fuck
Series,
them.
it was
Yeah.
it was like, well, there's no ties, there's nothing. Fuck them.
Exactly.
I'm totally
Yeah.
rooting for I'm totally rooting for the Yankees. Here.
None of my guys are here. The last one that
Yeah.
I'll mention for baseball before we pivot to another sport, Baltimore Orioles. I picked up a like strong rooting interest in them. They were bad in the late '80s. They had that historical, like I think they got out to like a 0 for 18 streak to start like the '88 season.
Yeah.
And they were the talk of the whole sport. They were on the cover of Sports Illustrated after they fired Cal Ripken Sr. After being that bad. Always liked Ripken, even like little kid me. Always liked Ripken. I thought he always was good, played hard. What turned me around was actually going to their ballpark though, and seeing Camden Yards. I think it was like it was the first year that they were operational at Camden Yards, so like 92. Yeah, 92.
Are you referring to Oriole Park?
Oriole
at
Park
Camden
at
Yards?
Camden Yards, yes.
Yes.
For short-term memory people, or long-term memory people, I'm just going to call it Camden Yards. But that still stacks up as one of my probably top 3 baseball parks. But I was so impressed by it that I was like, all right, and the Orioles like started to show signs of life in the early 90s and made it to the playoffs. And, they were a good like rival when the Mets weren't doing well. They were a good rival to the Yankees that if you had wink, wink, friends that wanted to go to Yankee games, like, hey, can we just get Yankees Orioles tickets? Do you mind if I wear my Orioles gear? And then the laughs of, yeah, go ahead, try that. But yes, honestly, like that allowed me to be part of a rivalry in baseball that was like, even if I lost, I didn't have to like sort of like sulk about it. It's like, all right, well, listen, I rooted for the Orioles tonight. They're kind of they're my American League team. I said that time and time again. They're my American League team. And Ripken's a legend, and he was, someone to look up to. And it was fun being, a little bit of a fan of that team. So you could go back to the Yankees if they took 2 out of 3. I would talk to somebody like you or other Yankee fans that we know and say like, hey, they just took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees. Looks like Baltimore's going to be, they're going to be a threat for the playoffs. You play them in the playoffs a couple times. Of course, like the Yankees eat their lunch, and Jeffrey Mayer's a cheater. It should have been thrown out of the stadium. But the whole point of the fact of the matter was that gave me a good rooting fallback for when it got to the middle of May and the Mets were 12 games out of third place, let alone 18 games out of first place. And you could kind of say like, all right, time to check out what Baltimore's doing. And for better or worse, just kind of stick it out with them. So they would probably rank historically. They've been my longest baseball side piece.
Ripken is a legend. You know who else is a legend? Jeffrey Mayer.
Yeah, of course. Good. All right, let's move to the other major sports. Let's briefly go through football. You said in our pre-show that you didn't really have that much for football.
Look, all disclosure, I'm a New York Jets fan.
Mm-hmm. As am I.
I-
This is where we do agree on this sport.
I've been a Jet fan I probably, yeah. I mean, I would say of all the major sports, I probably Jets would be the longest. You know, I declared myself a Jet fan way before I did a Yankee fan.
Okay, all right.
So it's been very well. I'm 47. Shit,
Ooh,
man. It's been
don't dox yourself like that. Come on.
it's fine. It's been over 40 years of just hey,
Yeah.
are you know while you're laying down, somebody coming and just kicking you right in the balls.
Yeah. Well.
And then as you're trying to get up, you know you slip on a banana peel and hit your head.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been heartache after heartache after heartache.
Yep. Yep.
So what it's kind of made me become, and when it comes to football, is I can't sit there and rejoice or find joy in another team winning.
Mm.
I just become very fucking bitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, yes, I'm a Jets fan. I can't stand the Patriots, but I couldn't sit there and actively root for the New York Giants in the Super Bowl
Mm-hmm.
against the Patriots because I did not want to see the Giants
I don't. Yeah.
fans
You don't want either of
win
them.
again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and then, you know, so I find it very hard to find a team consistently
Mm-hmm.
to have like a rooting. I would say maybe the Packers, just because my son is a Packers fan.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Plus, you know, I do enjoy the history of Green Bay and Lambeau Field,
Mm-hmm.
and
There you go. You're it.
even though it might be easy to make fun of, like I find it very interesting or cool that like you know the people there are you know it's community owned. You can
Mhm.
buy shares
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
you know they go there and they shovel out the stadium when there's snow and there's a game day,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they you know the players ride their bikes from Lambeau to the practice field and all that kooky shit that people are like, oh my god, that's like you know teams in the 50s. I find that fascinating. I
Yeah.
find it cool.
It's kind of cool. It's endearing. That's the word you're looking for. Is it's endearing.
Yeah. But
Hmm.
other than that, like I guess maybe randomly here and there, like if I had fantasy player back in the day when I played fantasy, like
Mhm.
I would root for individual players, or you know, I guess when you're watching the Super Bowl, you have to pick a team to root for during
Right.
the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. Um, so I mean, randomly here and there, but I wouldn't say I consistently have a side piece
Mm.
or, oh, this is my NFC team or
Okay.
this is my whatever. I guess the Packers would probably come closest.
That makes sense. Yeah. Uh, and you grew up in a Jets household. Your father's a Jet. Your father was a Jets fan.
My father was a Jet fan. My mom was. My brother turned coat and became a Los Angeles
Los
Rams
Angeles Rams fan, right?
Los Angeles to St. Louis, back to Los Angeles
Okay.
Rams
Right.
fan.
Right. My house was a Giants house. My brother and my dad were Giants fans, and they reaped the benefits of. And listen, I'm sure. And my dad used to tell stories of being the first team that he liked in the NFL was the Green Bay Packers because he was a Lombardi guy and he was a Paul Hornung guy. So, so he had a history.
I find there's a lot of that. Like older,
Mhm.
like oh, I used to like the Packers because I guess Lombardi was from Jersey.
Horning. Well, I don't think it was New Jersey as much as it was. I think he had been a coach, an assistant
Well,
coach
he's a
somewhere
coach with the
else.
Giants too,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
blah blah blah.
But also
But
Paul
I do-
Horning. My dad was a Notre Dame fan, so Paul Horning came out of Notre Dame's program, and so that was basically like it was a follow my guy situation to the NFL, and he wasn't really like a big NFL fan. He just sort of like rooted for the Packers, and but he at some point became a bigger Giants fan. If they suffered at all, you know, the two of them didn't have long. Giants win a Super Bowl in 85, 86. So for me, it was like, well, I don't want to root for the Giants. I didn't think like when I started first watching football, I was like, the Giants aren't interesting enough to me. The Jets were more fun. The Jets had Mark Gastineau. The Jets had Freeman McNeil, and I was like, they're more exciting than little stupid Phil Simms and all right Lawrence Taylor, but he's not as cool as Mark Gastineau. Mark Gastineau has long hair. So, boy, what a silly decision that was to
Yeah.
root for the.
Back the wrong horse on that one, Johnny.
But it was basically like I was, instead of the Mets, where it was like, hey, we're all going to be, the whole family's Mets fans. Let's go a little bit opposite here with the with football. So, long suffering Jet fan, actually like kind of fell out of like following football for a while in like the 90s, where it was like, yeah, I'd watch a few games, on a Sunday, or like read the paper, or like check in, but either I was working or I had something to do, so it wasn't like I had to like keep my eye on games. And then it's like, all right, so the early 2000s, it's like, all right, well, I'm going to play fantasy football. Then it's like all of a sudden that's opened up, and now it's like, holy crap, like I can root for these individual players now just as much as I root for so I can pay attention to the Jets, wait for them to let me down, and then I've got guys like Ocho Cinco. So now I'm following a player because I have him on fantasy, and I'm like, whoa, those Cincinnati Bengals are pretty good. Like, I'm going to pay more attention because I want to see how Ocho does. Bengals are on at 1 o'clock. Jets are on at 4 o'clock. I'm paying attention to the Bengals game. Then it becomes like, well, it's a ritual now to go to the bar and watch games. You can see every game that's going on, but I kind of want to still watch what Chad Johnson's doing because he's exciting, because he's dynamic. So I had that infatuation, mostly player based. Because when Chad Johnson left the Bengals, I wasn't all of a sudden like, hey, I'm going to follow him to, the Patriots or the Dolphins or wherever else he went. I was just like, I like Ocho. But that and fantasy football opens up your mind. And to a certain extent, betting is also the sort of thing where it's like it opens up your mind. And if you're seeing success with other teams, then it's like, well, if my team lets me down, I always have this as a fallback. I can always stay engaged and interested in the game because I've got money on this, or these three teams are in my parlay, and I really want to pay attention to that because that's going to give me more joy, and that's going to keep me interested rather than seeing the Jets have another bad Sunday performance. I'll still watch them. I'll still root for them. I'll still hold out hope and tell you at the beginning of every season, here's what I think their record's going to be. And it'll still not come out the way that we want it. And then we get to like the 2010s. My sister, who had been sort of like, she was kind of like grasping at teams and would be interested in, again, it's like certain players, or if she had friends that were fans of a team, it would be like, all right, I'll root for them too. Or so she wasn't like, when we grew up, like she wasn't a Giants or Jet fan either. But she got latched onto, by suggestion by one of our cousins, she got latched onto the Houston Texans. And I've sort of adapted the Texans as my secondary team because she roots for them. And it's like, it's just a good alternate to like keep an eye on what the Texans are doing, and it allows you to sort of like think, whoa, this might be a slightly better run franchise than the Jets are, so why not, give them a shot and see if this is something that's worth rooting for on a Sunday, or see if they've got a little bit more in the tank than the Jets do. And what's good about them is that they're in a kind of a little more wide open division where you don't have you don't have the Patriots to contend with, and now the Bills to contend with year after year. It sort of allows them to cycle in. So yeah, I mean that's really where it is. Like, it was the Bengals for a while, and then now it's the infatuation with not an infatuation. It's more or less like a interest in making sure I check in with the Texans every week. So
I find it very odd that your side pieces are other AFC teams. I think it's easier if your other side piece is out of the conference. But
okay.
Hey,
maybe one day I'll be like, the Panthers look cool.
yeah.
Nah,
Well, they got cool uniforms.
yeah.
I will give them that. I do like their uniforms.
The NFL does like that. You tend to like. I think that's what they do just as well as hockey, and we'll get to hockey next, but I think just as well as hockey, like if a team's got a cool uniform, you kind of find yourself like, especially before the game, and it's like, oh man, they're wearing, look at the Chargers are wearing those like really dope uniforms, or if the Buccaneers wear those creamsicle uniforms from the 70s, it's like,
Right.
oh, I want to see how that looks like after kickoff and all that other stuff. So it's sort of like it's a nice, pretty flashing light in front of you where you're like, oh, I'm distracted by this different color. They're not this drab gray and green team. They actually have a little bit of spark and pizzazz to them. And I love their logos are great. Like you can always like make a concession where it's like, and I think a lot of it I end up saying like, God, I hate that team, but fuck, that logo looks really fucking dope on that on the side of that helmet.
What was the Thursday night? What was it? The color
Rush?
the color rush.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of those were a little like the Jets Bills, where the Jets were all green and the Bills were all red.
Yeah.
And I donned it the Christmas Bowl.
Yes, right.
Even though it was like October.
October, right?
But
All
yeah, yeah. Some of especially when they do some, like, I don't know if you remember some of those uniforms from like the 75th anniversary of the
yeah.
NFL. Like, some of them were a little rough. Like the Steelers was kind of rough to look at.
It was impossible to root for.
But like, I can understand it, especially like when Seattle comes out in their highlighter uniforms. I could see why a kid would be like,
Yeah.
hey, I want a highlighter jersey, or like.
I think any flash of a throwback to like, I think the Falcons started doing it the last year or two, where occasionally they'll have the red helmet with the dark Falcon insignia, and it's like I remember that from when they were around, I think it was a lighter one, but whatever, like, whatever like reminds you of the first time you saw that team's logo.
Oh,
it's
the
I want to see that
Patriots-
all the time. Yeah.
The Patriots bring out, what is it, Patriot Pat or something? The guy on the side of the helmet. They wear like the red uniform, the red jerseys with the helmet, not the silver one with the thing or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's called Patriot Pat or something like that.
And I'll give the Giants credit. Like I think in the last like 2 years, they had that one like horrendous looking jersey, that striped blue and red striped with the beige pants they wore like week 1 last year. But they started to bring back the full spelling of Giants on the side of their helmet, and it's like that reminds me of an old Giants. And they started to wear like the whites that had the trim around the sleeves and around the collar, and it's like, okay, like this reminds me. I'll give them credit for recognizing their history. Jets are the same way. The Jets uniform looked great last year.
The team didn't look great, but their uniforms were very nice.
The problem is the only way that I could really see them is if I lied on the ground watching the game to get Aaron Rodgers' point of view.
It was kind of hard to tell what color, uniforms they were wearing through the tears in my eyes.
But it's those are the little subtle things, I guess, about the NFL that sets it apart. Plus, we'll get into hockey now. For hockey, I don't have a lot because there really isn't connection. But I will always say a cool logo on a hockey jersey will catch my attention, and I will always be interested if they have something like, even if it's like a one-time or a third kit that they wear like, a handful of times a year. I am always fired up to see like somebody doing something a little bit like a variant or a difference. And that's the first thing that I think of when it comes to like thinking of alternate teams. I'm a Ranger fan, always been a Ranger fan. And kind of lucky that they've been relatively successful, aside from a couple down years. They usually bounce back within like a year or two and they're back in the playoffs. So I haven't had to suffer, quote unquote. Yeah, I haven't had a cup since 1994, and that stings a little bit. But I've seen them in enough playoff series, and I've watched them, win President's trophies and have really great regular seasons. So I can't really I can't beat up on them too much. They're not the most miserable team in the league most of the time, so that's also a big thing. But yeah, what's your thoughts when it comes to the NHL?
I am a Devils fan.
Yes.
I've been lucky that I've got to see, contrary, the flip side of the Jets would be I've gotten to see the Devils win 3 cups in my lifetime.
Yep. Yep.
They have had some garbage years, but they seem to bounce back. They're in the playoffs. Hasn't really been the same, I guess you could say, since Marty retired. But for me, it's another sport where it's very regional. I
Mhm.
feel like there's a lot of team. Like it's hard for me to, you have the Flyers, the Rangers, the Islanders, and then you got the Penguins, the Capital. Like
Mhm.
they're all like very close to each other, and
Yeah,
it's
you just
really hard
put
to kind of
Buffalo in
like,
there. You put Boston in there.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I guess one of the teams that sometimes I find myself rooting for, probably goes back to when I first started watching hockey,
Mhm.
which seemed the only time I could ever get like, unless I specifically went to like MSG or Sports Channel and watched like a Ranger game or a Devils game or an Islanders game. Uh, Occasionally they would put the Stanley Cup playoffs on either like Channel 7 or they would put it on sometimes on ESPN.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my early years of watching, the first so many years of watching hockey, I watched I think the Oilers played the excuse me, the Bruins. Those '80s teams where they had Gretzky and
Oh
Messier
yeah.
and Grant
Yeah.
Fuhr and Paul Coffey. Um, so I always kind of, when the Devils are out of it, and I hear like now in the past couple of years, like Connor McDavid plays for the Oilers, so
Mhm.
they're in the Cup Finals or they're doing well in the playoff. Like I'll find myself rooting for the Oilers just because it kind of goes back to when I was a kid.
Yeah. Sure.
Plus,
Sure.
they still have those classic like those
Yeah.
blue and orange uniforms
Yeah. Yeah.
that like I'm sorry, man, they're kick ass. Like
They do kick
that's a kick
ass. Yeah.
ass. Um, if I was ever going to buy a hockey jersey that wasn't a Devils one, it would be some sort of like I think it would be the blue and orange
Hmm.
like road what used to be a road jersey.
Yeah. Now
Now
it's the
they
home
flip it.
tag. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I would probably find myself wearing like a Gretzky
Yeah. No, it's awesome.
or something like that
Yeah.
would be kind of cool. But yeah, there's just so much, teams that like it is really cool that like the original six. But
Hmm.
then I'm sitting
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
thinking like, well, the Rangers are in there. The Devils and Rangers are rivals. The
Yeah.
Bruins are in there. The Bruins are always a thorn in the fucking Devils' side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, the Devils played the Red Wings in the Cup final, so it's kind of hard to root for the Red Wings. Um, the Maple Leafs are just,
Yeah. I
I
don't
don't
think
know.
anybody.
How the fuck are you gonna root for them? They
Uh,
they
this-
always seem the way they could be up 3-0 in a series
I
and find
know.
a way to lose.
This is
Like,
our year. The
the
Blackhawks have an awesome
Canadians,
logo.
the Canadians, their fans are just fucking, they're obnoxious. So it's like, the Blackhawks are kind of cool. They got that cool like cool logo with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Indian.
Indian
So,
Chief. Yeah. Yeah.
but then they had some guy, like, it was kind of hard to root for fucking Chelios and some of those guys. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's some teams. It's kind of hard to like. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be like a Coyotes fan or like like there's two hockey teams in Florida. It's like weird. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't really associate hockey with Florida,
You
but
better start because listen,
yeah,
they're
they're really good. I get it.
they're all red hot. But um,
I would have preferred that what's his face that Utah would stayed as the Utah Hockey Club
hockey club. Yeah.
rather than going with the Yeti. I was digging like Utah Hockey Club.
UTHC. Yeah.
Kind of like old time hockey.
Yeah.
Like,
But you had mentioned the Leafs and the Canadians and the Oilers. I think like if and just because it's I guess it's that running narrative now where it's like you just need that resurgence of traditional Canadian hockey teams or teams that operate their business in Canada. They've got to get off this like schneid. When was the last time? Like what was it? Like they've been in cup finals, but they haven't won a cup since '97 or something like that. It's such a like it's
the Oilers.
no.
I think the last one.
Every Canadian team, they haven't had a
yeah.
Canadian Stanley Cup winner in such a long time. Where that's the sort of thing like when you get to the playoff
Flames?
time.
Was it not? Was the Flames the last team that won?
They made the cup. They might have won the cup. I'd have to do
Because I know they won. They won in the late '80s. The Flames won. That was like the team full of no names
But I think
that won the.
the Canadiens won it in like '93. That might have been the last one. But
Yeah.
the point that I'm getting at is like you've got a lot of so
Right.
I in my brain I have a lot of sympathy for the Canadian teams when it comes to playoff time because it's like this is their national sport. Like, they usually have a team on paper during the regular season that it's like this is the team of destiny. The Maple Leafs were kind of in that conversation this year where it's like I think this is the year that we're going to get, and the Maple Leafs are going to be that team, and it didn't work out. The Oilers went to the Cup last year, and it's everybody is sort of saying to themselves, this will come out. Maybe they close out their series tonight, but it's always like you're kind of like at least me in the back of my brain, I'm like, just let these guys like get over that hump, win the cup, and then it's a level playing field for every. You basically reset the league, and it's like, all right, cool. Like we got through like our little curse of Canada. Let's get past it, and let's let one of them win, make it happen, and now you can sort of. And at this point, if let's say the Oilers do make it. Now I've got the Oilers beating Florida, who I really don't want Florida. The Florida Panthers, they're getting too good in these, in this last decade when it comes to playoff hockey. So I'm ready for somebody else to mash their teeth in. But that sort of like that allows me to like kind of believe where it's like, all right, am I leaning towards them? Are they my side piece this year? It's possible.
I wonder if the Canadian Cup drought coincides with Canada letting the Nordiques go and embracing the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, it could be right. That could be it's their own curse. Nordiques, by the way, another tremendous retired hockey jersey. That God, old logos are great. The Whalers were awesome. The North Stars were awesome.
I'm high-fiving anybody with a Hartford Whalers jersey.
Oh hell yeah!
I don't know.
Yeah. So let's move on to basketball as the last of our major sports here in the United States. See, this is a blind spot for me because I did not grow up as a basketball fan. I didn't have a team per se. My brother, and to a certain extent, my dad were Knicks fans. My brother tailed off after a while and focused on college. And I think the family itself, like, we devoted a lot of our interest and rooting interest in college basketball when college basketball was like red hot. And it was like, all right, well, the NBA is cool, but, I was more like player driven and I wanted to see like good players in the playoffs and like root for good matchups in the playoffs, whether that's the Bulls versus the Pistons, Knicks versus the Bulls, Houston Rockets against the Jazz, whatever it was. I just wanted to see. My mentality when it comes to the NBA is NBA Jam, just NBA Jam this whole thing. Give me the two best players from each team, and we're going to put them in a giant like 30-team tournament. NBA, if you're listening, this is a great idea. I think you do this for your little baby tournament at the beginning of the season so that somebody feels better about putting a banner in the rafters, but just make it NBA Jam style. Just run two guys out there. Yeah, you can maybe sub a third guy in, but just do that, and I'll be so happy, and I'll watch your product again.
You want like Ice Cube? You want the Ice Cube 3-on-3 league?
No, I don't want that.
Pretty NBA. Nah.
No.
But you want NBA players?
Yeah, I just want a real life NBA jam. Ed trampolines, if you want to. Big heads and trampolines.
You want the ball to turn into fire if somebody's getting hot. You want their
Yes.
shoes to highlight.
Yeah.
You want Marv Albert.
No, I do want
do it.
Marv. Yeah. Let's bring Marv. Let's bring Marv back to the booth. But also, I mean, I will say, like, I had a few sort of interests. Like when I was a kid, like the Miami Heat started in the league in 89 or 90, and I did get for Christmas one year. I did get a Miami Heat like satin jacket that was fucking dope. It was like it was legitimately one of the coolest pieces of. It was before they had like it was made by Starter, but it was before Starter did like the pouch jackets.
Right.
This was legitimately one of the coolest pieces of merchandise that I ever had, and within the course of like 7 months, I outgrew it because I was like a 14 or 15-year-old kid, and fucking bodies expand and you get too tall and your arms get too long. And it's not like I got like super long, but I probably had like a 10, 12 boy body for a long time. And then it's like, all right, you have a little bit of a growth spurt. And then all of a sudden you look like Herman Munster wearing this jacket. And I was like, if I can't wear that jacket, I'm not rooting for the Heat. So I gave up on the Heat within like a year and a half. And there was interesting. There was 1 year, that I decided to take a chance on the NBA. Before the NBA season started, I was like, I'm going to have a draft lottery. I'm going to put every team in the NBA into a hat, and I'm going to draw them out elimination style until the last one is standing. That season, I rooted for the Atlanta Hawks. And the Atlanta Hawks did make it to the playoffs. This is the Joe Johnson Atlanta Hawks, I think in... I want to say 2009, somewhere 2009, maybe 2012, in that little pocket of time. I briefly dabbled as an Atlanta Hawks fan, and I would sit at the bar and say, "Hey, the Hawks are on tonight. Do you mind like putting that on the TV so I can see the Hawks?" So yeah, that was my. The closest I've been to having a rooting interest in the NBA was the Hawks recently.
So my allegiance in the NBA is actually with the Boston Celtics.
You're only out of towners.
Yeah. My dad was kind of a Celtics fan, although by the time like my stream of consciousness, he really didn't like NBA basketball anymore.
Okay.
He was a Bob Cousy type of guy. That was his favorite player.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up in the Cousy, Bill Russell era. Havlicek stole the ball.
Yeah.
For me, I think in like second or third grade, St. Anne's had like an intramural learn how to play basketball league Saturday mornings. And one of my friends, this kid, Mark, his dad was our basketball coach.
Okay.
And occasionally, depending on what time our games were, if we were like one of the last games of the day, I would actually go back and hang out with him at his house. And their family were like basketball nuts.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He had like an older brother, the dad. All of them were Boston Celtic fans. And this is kind of like they had a hoop in their driveway on the garage.
Awesome. Yeah.
Which was like not like now you see everybody, you drive down a street and people
got them in this. Yeah, you got the full.
Like it was rare back then that somebody had an actual hoop like at their house. So it was cool. Like we would go back and we would play basketball. And then back in the day, like CBS had Saturday, they would have an East Coast game at 1:00 and then a West Coast game at 4.
Mm-hmm.
And most times it was usually the Celtics were the 1:00 game.
Yeah.
So I became a really Larry Bird was my favorite player. I rooted for the Celtics. Um, they had a nice little run there in the 80s where they made it to the finals. The finals were always like not everything back then for the NBA was
True.
televised. It's
Right.
not like now, but the finals always seemed to actually get, it was June, so all of like the regular television was kind of like in reruns. So whoever had the rights would put them on in prime time. So I was always able to watch the finals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so and then I just kind of stayed with, even when Bird retired and Reggie Lewis passed away and
Mm.
also up till now, I won't say I'm as diehard of an NBA fan as I am now as I was when I was a kid, but the Celtics are still definitely my team.
Okay. All right.
With that said, since there wasn't always the access to watch um, the NBA, it's not like now where games are on TNT and ESPN,
Oh
or
yeah. Yeah.
you can actually get an NBA package and watch, every Celtic game or
Mhm.
whatever out of town game. Um, so there were moments. I would say my side team sometimes was watching the Nets because they
Okay.
were on local, and I hated the Knicks, so I was never going to pick the Knicks, even though I could watch Knick games on MSG all the time. I always found myself rooting for the Nets because they were from Jersey. Um, they had there was a season or two where they had those cool tie-dyed uniforms
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
where everyone made fun of, but I thought they were really fucking cool. And even going up to the year, I think it's '02 and '03, they had Jason Kidd and they made it to the NBA Finals back-to-back years and lost, but those teams were fun to watch. Byron Scott was the coach.
Mhm.
They were kind of like, you know, Jason Kidd was doing alley oops to like Kevin Martin and Van Horn and those guys from like half court or outside the 3 point. Like they were a fun team to watch. They were kind of like the Showtime Lakers. Um, but yeah, that would be as closest to maybe a side team just because they were a little bit more local. They weren't the Knicks. It kind of faded when they moved to Brooklyn, and uh, now, I mean, I if I want to watch the Celtics, I can watch them whenever I want.
Yeah. True.
But
Yeah. You have better
I guess
access.
the other team that I found myself rooting for was the Indiana Pacers because at one time Bird was the coach of them for a
Oh, that's a good
while, and
point. Yeah.
then he was the team president. Plus, the Pacers have always kind of been a
Thorn in the
thorn in the
side. Yeah.
side of the Knicks. Which,
This is very anti-Knicks.
you know what, I had a Boston Celtics starter jacket, the
Yeah.
pullover ones with the
Okay.
little pouch in the front,
Right. The memorable
and
starters. Yeah.
so that during that time is where Bird kind of goes into retirement. They go into the downspin,
Mhm.
and I got shit all the time from Knicks fans, and I would hear people trying like with a straight face trying to tell me that John Starks was just as good as Michael Jordan,
Oh
or
yeah.
that Patrick
Yeah.
Ewing was the best center in the NBA,
Hmm.
and I got nothing but delight watching that team lose every year to the Bulls, or even when when Starks is clanking it off
Uh huh.
the brick city in Houston in Game 7. Like I found a lot of joy in that, and I still find joy in watching the Knicks lose and torture their fans because of what those fans did to me in the early '90s. So
Wow. Okay.
um,
All right. Grudge.
outside of that, I mean, I'll never find myself. I will never root for the Lakers, no
I
matter
don't. Come on.
what.
Yeah. We don't have to
Um,
pick you. You know, but that's certainly like if you've spent any time as a Boston fan, you have learned like the Lakers are as big of a rival to you for the history of your team as
yeah.
the Knicks might be locally or the Bulls might be, in a historical playoff sense or even like in a current fashion. You could probably name two or three teams that are
Well,
perennial like playoff opponents for the Celtics.
historically, I mean, going back to when I started watching them, I mean, it's always like the 76ers were always a big,
Yeah,
that was,
the Sixers
and
were.
then the Pistons
Mhm.
in the late '80s. Um, but yeah, but that was back when like NBA was fun. Like everybody had like that one suit. Like there wasn't like guys joining up and stuff. Like everybody had that one guy. Like you didn't like the 76ers, and you certainly didn't like Barkley. You didn't like the Pistons.
Hmm.
You didn't like anybody. You almost sometimes felt bad for Joe Dumars because it was like he seemed like a nice guy, but he was on a team with a bunch of
Bunch of
scumbags.
scumbags. Yeah,
It was
you're
like,
right. Yeah.
Jordan in Chicago, and he had his like, his cast of guys that, did
Hmm.
whatever Michael wanted.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of like, oh, let's join forces, and which I can't. I mean,
That's where the
the
money is.
Celtics started it with the big three, but
Yeah.
everybody's kind of copied it from
Yeah.
there. But
Well,
yeah, that was back when NBA was fun, when you had rivalries and teams you couldn't stand and
and guys that were
players you
tied to your
couldn't stand.
franchise forever, or guys that
Yep.
like, you could, the second that you say, whatever NBA team, you knew there was
I
one
mean,
guy that you would affiliate it with. Yeah.
could you imagine like if Barkley would have turned around and said, "Okay, I'm gonna go get Reggie Miller, and me, Reggie Miller, and Ewing are gonna
Yeah.
play for the Knicks."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. League would have
bad
folded.
enough. Bad enough watching Wade Boggs win a World Series with the Yankees.
All right. I know you're a soccer guy. The soccer's a bit again. I like watching international soccer more than I like watching U.S. soccer. I don't know why. It's just sort of like so. Like for my brain, if I think of soccer, like I had a time where I was really rooting for Manchester United and following them like every week in the Premiership. That's really tailed off, but like I would say for like a good like 10 years, I was very interested in like finding out like who they're trading for, what their young guys and their future looks like. I like to go watch games and get wrapped up in their rivalries and their derbies and all of that stuff. I don't know if I could even call them a side piece, because I think I could call them a side piece because I wasn't like really, I wasn't spending that much money on them other than like a sweatshirt or a jersey. I wasn't buying tickets to like a Manchester United game per se, but for the most part, they would qualify as the only soccer team that I kind of like rooted for. But you've got a little bit more of a pro soccer history. So do you got anybody in mind for soccer?
Well, internationally, I do enjoy the English Premier Soccer probably the most, because I think top to bottom, it's probably the most competitive league in Europe.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the other leagues are very top heavy, and it kind of gets a little boring watching Barcelona beat the bottom half of the
Exactly.
league, like
Yeah, it's pretty samey.
7-1. But I do find myself, I'm a Chelsea supporter.
Mhm. Okay.
I I was the opposite for a while when I first really kind of got into watching, when it became more, I guess, accessible to watch
Mhm.
uh, European soccer, specifically the EPL. I find myself, I could not stand Manchester United, rooted against them. I would root for whoever they were playing for.
Okay.
Past, I would say maybe 7 or 8 years, they've kind of gotten in their own way.
Yeah. Well,
It's become a little bit. It's just like, I don't find myself feeling bad for them, but in a way, it's just kind of like, man, what happened to you guys?
they're a
Used
little
to
less
be-
hateable when they're
Now it's kind of funny that has shifted more towards Man City
Mhm.
as like a
Yeah.
team that nobody like, because they spend all the money, they win. Not that Chelsea doesn't spend money in there or anything like that. They're not exactly a poor team, but Man City over the year, I think people have kind of gotten tired of hearing about Pep, his geniusness and all that stuff. So, yeah, I find myself maybe more. There's certain teams that like, I don't want to I don't want to see Bayern Munich win again, or whatever
Yeah,
whatever
of
it
course.
is.
Yeah.
Locally here in the U.S., I started off as a Metro Stars fan,
Mhm.
who have now turned into the New York Red Bulls. So that's a team that in the MLS that I support. When I was a kid, soccer was my favorite sport of
Mm.
all of them, and I was a New York Cosmo fan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the league unfortunately disbanded when I was like 83 or 84.
Yeah, of
I
course.
think they did like an indoor league there was like a New York Cosmos indoor league and stuff.
There sure was. Yeah. Channel 11.
So one thing I've always had like a gripe, I guess, with MLS was that they didn't embrace, like, I understood, like, as a business, like, not following the business model of the NASL. Like,
Hmm.
the Cosmos were allowed to spend whatever amount of money they wanted. They had, for their top 11 was like an all-star team. They beat up on everybody. They won every year. And it really wasn't really all that good for anybody outside of being a Cosmo fan.
Yeah, sure.
And in some ways, I won't say directly led to the NASL folding, but it did contribute
Yeah.
when you have other teams that just know that, hey, we have no chance of winning here. We're not going to spend money. Why, all right.
Nobody's coming to our
You know,
games if we can't see stars, too. Right.
but MLS didn't really embrace any of there's two New York teams in MLS right now. Neither one of them are the New York Cosmos. And that has always bothered me from the beginning.
Okay. All right.
Um,
Embrace the legacy as well.
there's a DC team, but they're not the only one of all, just about all of them that kind of went back to the NASL days is what's referred to as the Cascadia rivalry, which is the Portland Timbers,
Hmm.
the Seattle Sounders, and the Vancouver Whitecaps. That
Okay.
goes back to NASL days, and I find myself watching those teams because of the historical part of it. Plus, Portland and Seattle have like a really cool fan base.
They do.
I love
Yes.
watching games in Portland. The lumberjack that comes out and cuts the log anytime one of their players scores a goal. They have the coolest tifos or banners, like that
Mhm.
the supporters sing the national anthem. Nobody comes out and sings the national anthem at their home games.
They just
The
let the fans
supporters
do it.
sing it.
I like
Yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah.
it's just it's a really cool atmosphere. It's close to European soccer, like
Okay.
that atmosphere. Not as violent, without the violence. Don't want that in the game, but they love their teams. They hate their rivals. They don't like the other teams. Um, and that little trio there is always, Vancouver, unfortunately, for a long time was like the kind of like the team that got kicked around. But last year, like they're really kind of coming into their own. I still don't forgive them for playing in a dome, but
Okay. Well,
whatever. But yeah, so that like I always enjoyed that little like I find myself if the Red Bulls are out of it or like the Red Bulls play at 7:30 and then there's like a Portland game on at 9:30 or 10
You'll-
o'clock.
you'll check
I'll
that out.
watch that, especially if it's a home game. Um, Seattle's another one that like cool fan base. They spend money. They've had a history of like Dempsey and
Mhm.
Jordan Morris. They
That's
have
true,
U.S.
yeah.
players that play on it and stuff, so they're easy to root for. And like I was saying, Vancouver's coming on. They beat Miami in the tournament so far, and which was kind of an upset because Messi and all those guys that are down there.
Mhm.
So yeah, that would be my soccer, I guess. Side pieces would
Okay.
be rooting for the Cascadia Triangle
Do you have
teams.
anything else before we wrap up the episode? Do you have anything else to just sort of throw out there as I guess this wouldn't be a side piece because are there any other like off center? Let's say off center sports teams that you at least want to give a shout out to that you would
Well, I
say
guess, I
have
mean,
your eye.
Would you mention college? Is there any college?
I guess, but I mean, I think that's like if I was a huge college football.
I mean,
fan,
you went to St. John's, but I mean, I see you wearing a Texas Longhorn.
yeah,
hat.
yeah. So I guess I could be accused of that, but I think it's more because St. John's didn't have a football team,
Right.
and I really wasn't a college football fan until, again, just like that when I got reinterested interested again in the NFL in the 2000s, I kind of drifted back to college to check that out and started rooting for the Longhorns. And again, it's not a team that I need to like go down and see them live. It's, it's more or less like I'll watch them, a little bit of them every week, if not a full game. I'll watch enough of them to get an idea as to what they're doing. But that's more because if St. John's had a football team, like I'd probably be a St. John's fan because I'm a St. John's basketball fan, and I like the St. John's baseball team as well. So I guess kind of like that.
I did have a number of years there for a while that I was I openly rooted for Penn State football.
Okay, all right.
I was happy. I was really happy when the Jets drafted Blair Thomas.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When everybody was booing the Kyle Brady pick, I was kind of like, no, this kid's a really good player. Like, yeah. Not kind of both of those kind of fell flat.
Well,
but
I mean, come on.
Obviously the the scandal, Joe Paterno scandals and stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of put an end to that, and I haven't really. I know they have a new coach and they've done their best or whatever, but I haven't. Yeah. I haven't really gone back to that since that era or that scandal and stuff. There was a time when like I really did follow college basketball because players would stay for 3 or 4 years and you could develop rivalry. Like I couldn't stand Duke basketball, so like I was always rooting for whoever was playing against Duke. Yeah. But like I never really had like a real like a tennis player that like where it wasn't like, oh, I'm a huge Andre Agassi fan, but I kind of like, on the side.
That's individual sports are tougher because, and I would say that for golf, like, there's probably a handful of guys that I like in the PGA that I'm like every time I want to see some of their round every time they play. But there's also like guys that are like underneath where it's like, I'm kind of rooting for this guy too, or I could see myself putting some money on this guy. He's, strung together a couple. But that's, it's very like up or down, or it's very like tiered, I guess you could say, where I think with the other major sports, it's very much like the team you grew up watching dictates who you are going to be a fan of for your life. And that loans itself, if it's disappointing in that run, then your eye goes to that very alluring side piece that has a very fancy uniform, or they have a very a fantastic ball player, or a reason to like root for them, and then that leads us astray in our rooting interest. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm not an advocate for sports monogamy. If it makes you happy, if your team sucks, or if you want to make money with a hot team in the NFL, and hey, this team, like, I won 3 weeks on my bets with this team. Like, I really want to like do more research and figure out a little bit more about them. Go ahead. Eventually when your team shows up, does exactly what they need to do for you, you'll be right there with them and rooting them on. But hey, it's a sports fan can't have tunnel vision. They got to see what's on the rest of the plate.
In all seriousness, the past couple of years, I've really been thinking about like, is there another football team that I could watch other than the Jets, or is there another team that I've really been seriously considering jumping ship. I've given my time.
Okay.
Like I don't like if somebody was like, oh no, like, dude, I've given this team like 40 years of my life.
Yeah.
And I've had very little of reward, and like I can deal with them not winning a Super Bowl, but it's being the fucking clowns of the NFL that like
I know.
Outside of maybe Arizona or Cleveland, Jets have pretty much been a punching bag for but it's been because they've been such a punching bag for everybody. It's kind of hard for me to like find another, like I was trying to be like the Lions are inspirational. They were a real punching bag, and now they're pretty good. Like, But then I became just jealous, like, oh, why are they fucking good now? Why can't the Jets be like that?
When's our time gonna be?
Come on,
When
or
is
like,
everybody gonna start loving us?
yeah, and it's just one of those things where it's like, if I don't, if I eliminate all the teams that have basically kind of like punched the Jets in the gut, there's only like a handful of teams left, and I'm like, of all of those teams, there's not one of them I really want to root
Yeah,
for.
would it be so much better by pivoting to the Carolina Panthers at this point? Like they're just in as sorry a boat as the Jets are, I think.
Yeah, it's like the Panthers, the Saints, like,
Well,
it's like,
Falcons? Come on.
it's like
I don't know.
the whole NFC South. You could flush all of that down the toilet, and I'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do? Be a Seahawks fan? Like, fuck, I can't do that.
I don't know.
But I don't want to bring the bad juju to Green Bay, because then my son will hate me for the
you
rest
might
of
be
his
the
life.
Kavork. Yeah, you could be the one that's you've got the ick, as the kids say these days. So
Yeah.
all right, well that's our episode on side pieces. We've made our confessions. I think our regular sports franchises will take us back. I don't think they're going to be like, we're done with you, divorce time. So we're allowed to, be happy and dab. We have an open relationship. I have an open relationship with the teams that I root for. So we'll just leave it at that. I hope you feel better about the confessions that you made today, Cap.
Yeah, there's a very good like a cleansing. I feel, like I went to confession.
I like this. Yeah.
My sins were all wiped away.
All right. Well, that's for the captain, Michael Corby. This has been the Reverend Mike Madden. We hope you guys have a great night, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, Reverend.